everyone, and welcome to CRS 2022. I'm Clay Honeycutt, General Manager of Big Machine Records and CRB Board Member. I'm also proud to serve as CRS Research Committee Chairman. Here's what you're about to see today. We've got NuVoodoo. Lee Jacobs and Carolyn Gilbert are going to bring you an amazing research project developed by some of your fellow peers, and we're going to look at the multi-generations of the country genre. There's some great findings here, some great takeaways, no matter what part of the business you're in. So I really hope you enjoy it and hope you get some great takeaways. Be sure to attend the 2 p.m. session today called Reality Check, Who is the Country Music Fan? It's a great companion piece to the data we're sharing this morning, and you won't want to miss it. Also, join us tonight at Bob Kingsley's Acoustic Alley at 7 p.m. right here in the Legends Ballroom for an evening with our format's most gifted songwriters. It's something you won't want to miss. The evening will be sponsored by Skyview and First Horizon with your first drink on ASCAP. One last thing before we get to this session. The safety and well-being of all CRS attendees is a priority. We believe achieving a healthy CRS environment is a shared responsibility. We strongly encourage you to do your part by masking up during session presentations and while you're in a group setting this week. We really appreciate you taking those precautions. Now, please silence your phones. Don't forget to complete the session survey on the CRS app for a chance to win a CRS 2023 registration. Hope you enjoy it. See you soon.
Hey.
Good morning.
There are people in the flesh with feet.
I mean, just how great is it to all be together again? Woo! See entire faces. There are people in this room who don't know I have feet.
And the funny thing is, it's been 2 years since we stood in front of a room, and I realized it's been 2 years since I've not done one of these things with the script in front of me and the dog behind me wearing yoga pants. So I'm sitting here going, I do this all the time. Why am I nervous? That's why I'm nervous. I'd like to first say how honored we are to have been chosen to do this project. We've worked extremely hard on it. You're going to see the state of country music from the respondent level, and Clay gave us this mission to do multi-generational, and he said, yeah, stop at 54, we want the boomers. The boomers start at 58. We are getting old. So generally speaking, our mission sits in front of you. Look at the differences among the generations. As they apply to country, and there are some. Where is country music now? According to these people, how and where are they consuming country music? And that's important, more important now than ever. Where do they find the new music? And how do the generational differences impact country music as a whole? Our project to respond to the RFP they sent out was multifaceted. As a matter of fact, there's one facet of our project we're not even going to show you today because there was so much information. We began with extended conversations with human beings, and you're going to see a bunch of them. You're going to see these people in their environments. We have a couple guys who are sitting there in a parking lot outside of a Dollar General talking about country music. There are a few mothers with children. People say, well, it's not a focus group. It's not in a room with a mirror. I think COVID has made these things better. And because qualitative research has become so much more important, NuVoodoo's hired someone who has never worked in music or radio. Jerry Fields is our Vice President of Research Insight. She's been with us for about a year, and she comes to us from consumer brands, where they have competition and they use research in creative ways. And you used to say, well, if you have to do a focus group, you don't know your business very well. Well, we don't know our business very well anymore. We have to talk to people, find out what they're doing, and reflect back to them. Jerry comes to us with a boatload of experience with brands from Procter & Gamble, Fruit of the Loom. She's worked on the agency side, she's worked on the researcher side, through Ipsos, and she's worked on the client side. So we're going to move to the qual first, and here's Jerry Fields.
I get called a unicorn sometimes. Agency, vendor, client, they all come from a different perspective. So it's been wonderful to now come to the radio side of things. I am not new to research, right? So I have done pretty much every product you can probably think of, but also every industry, all kinds of research online and live and in person. But you know, radio is definitely something I'm learning through a fire hose, as we all say, right? So one thing across all of them, you know, that is important is to understand the why, the so what. You know, you have to, right? And so, you know, qualitative gets you that story, right? They, you know, we want to know why people are choosing, how they're choosing, what decisions they're making. You know, research gives you the conversation in their own words, you know, qualitative does. And at the end of the day, it has to advise, you know, quantitative, because how do you even make a survey with the lists, you know, that people choose from, right? Unless you've asked and you know what's important. So that's one of the things that I've, you know, tried to help and bring, you know, to the radio world. And one of the things, you know, that we've all been through in the last couple of years is this idea that adoption of some of these technologies, you know, streaming and things, you know, we just took what could have been a, you know, 10, 15-year adoption process, those late adopters, you know. We just grabbed them by the shirt collar and dragged them into the future, right, over the last 2 years. And we heard everyone from, you know, Gen Z up to, you know, the boomers talking about, yep, we listen to country music all day long on our Alexas, on YouTube. So we were a little bit like, wow, you know, okay, we get this, we see this. And, you know, and not for nothing, but, you know, radio, they would say, yeah, we listen to radio. Well, they listen to music, right? They're talking in terms of radio becoming synonymous with just audio, music, right? I mean, welcome to the world of Tylenol. People don't say, oh, I took some acetaminophen today, I'll feel better. Hell no, it's all Tylenol, right? Same thing for Kleenex. I mean, when was the last time you heard someone say, oh, I Googled it on Amazon? Okay, you Googled it on Amazon, got it. I mean, Google is now search, right? So that's where radio sort of is in that boat now, you know, and CPG's been dealing with this kind of thing for a while, right? Consumer packaged goods have. So you know, welcome aboard, right? So, you know, that's the thing with radio. We're there, you know, we're in this boat. And so we pulled out all of our tricks, you know, that we had in terms of talking to people, really diving deeper and really understanding, you know, their daily life with music and radio. And, you know, we pulled in fans from all walks of life, all age groups. And here's just a sampling.
I do have country music on our radio 24/7.
Everything right now is moving more towards apps and new technologies.
A couple times a week, it's usually on the computer. Usually, most of the time, it's just, you know, the Alexa. We have them in almost every room.
Sometimes when I'm in the kitchen, I'll ask for a station, usually just like George Strait radio or Faith Hill radio.
I do feel like there's sometimes some stress in like picking the songs or making a playlist. Like there's just so many options available to us, so it's nice to have it just kind of play for me.
I work at a vet clinic. Communal station that everybody can agree on is the country station.
Or to get something funny, get contests. I enjoy that aspect, but sometimes I just want to hear music.
It don't matter what mood you're in, you can always put country music with it.
I grew up listening to country, so it kind of just pulls me back to them days.
That is what can be special about it. It is for the people.
And here we go. What we did was took everything they told us, and with Clay and the research committee, we put together a questionnaire that's sitting here in my hand, in case people have questions later. We put together a questionnaire, and we administered it to a whole lot of Americans. What we saw was we fielded it nationally across the United States in proportion to population, and you're going to be shocked to hear this because you heard it yesterday in Haley Jones's panel. Country over-indexes in the Midwest and the South. Go figure. As you guys all know Lee Jacobs by now, at least from the waist up. He's our EVP Strategic Analysis. I think besides Brad Riegel, he has looked at more music research than any human in the country.
World.
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 World domination.
And he put together this questionnaire with Clay and the team. To hear someone say something is one thing. To figure out whether it's really an issue, you need to quantify. And with no further ado, Mr. Jacobs in the flesh.
Thanks very much, Carolyn. And as I said, I'm still aghast. It's so cool to be here. I love this. So listen, we started with 9,501 respondents, 14 to 64, trying to find country music fans. So you see in the columns here, rock, pop top 40, hip hop, R&B, country in the darker blue, easy listening. And these are just words, because frankly, we knew we had the word on our side. It's sometimes difficult to describe AC to respondents, but here we're just describing country. Country fans know that they like country. So you see how the numbers work across the generations. Gen Z, that's 14 to 25. Millennial is 26 to 41. Gen Z, 42 to 57. Gen X, thank you. Gen X, and I'm going to get my Z's and X's confused today. Gen X are the older people now in 25, 54, and then the boomers don't start till 58. Oof. They go up to 77, but we cut it off at 64. We just kind of wanted a taste of what do the boomers think about all this stuff. And you can see how it performs, the country bar, 21% among Z, 43% among millennial, 34 Gen X, 35 among the boomers. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Can somebody move the slide?
There we go.
See?
Whoa, nope.
Whoop.
One back.
Back one. Beep, beep. No, okay. So, across the 4 major regions of the country, country music fans, it's not terrible anywhere. I mean, it's really pretty strong numbers across the board, but these are just fans. How do you feel about it? If I break down the generations, in that top panel, that's pre-screener. That's where we're talking about 9,501 14 to 64s. And you'll see generationally, that's a quarter, almost a quarter, 24% are Gen Z, 14% Gen X, or rather boomers, 28 Gen X. In the bottom bar, that's our screen sample of 3,266 14 to 64s who are bona fide country music fans.
And they couldn't go past this point unless they were country fans.
You got to be a country fan to get past this point. And you'll see it over-indexes when you look at the millennials, and it under-indexes Gen Z, but we've come to expect that's going to be true. People age into country to a degree, if you will, as they start getting married, making babies, having careers, having lives that are reflected in the lyrics of the songs that they're listening to.
And these people love country music.
Holy gosh.
And what we found is it crosses generations. We asked the question both in the qual and the quant, did your family listen to country music as you were growing up? And the answer, by and large, except maybe for the boomers, who are too old to remember, the answer was yes.
Absolutely yes. How long have you been a fan of country music in that top panel? Lifelong in yellow, over 10 years, and I guess we'll call that brown. Light blue, 5 to 10 years. 1 to 5 years in the darker blue. And guess what? You see that bigger among Gen Zs. They're newer at all of this. Less than a year in pink, not sure. The only place where the not sure number gets big enough to kind of show up is among the boomers, because frankly, they don't remember. They just don't remember. Thank you. So in the bottom panel.
Y'all, I'm not there yet.
Okay. Says our Gen X. When you were growing up, were either of your parents country music fans? Yeah, this stuff sticks with people. Look at that. 71% among the Zs, 77 among the millennials. It's 56 among the boomers, but as Carolyn said, they forgot.
Whenever I was a little kid, my stepdad listening to like Hank Williams Jr. and Alan Jackson. I married a waitress and I didn't even know her name. I used to love that song as a little kid.
I grew up listening to the radio because they were listening to the radio, checking out stations, country stations, or, talk radio. I learned from them my listening habits, and I still use those listening habits.
So if I break it down by regions of the country, Northeast, Midwest, Southwest, lifelong country fans, Northeast, not so much. It's more of an adopted behavior, despite the fact that 2/3 of them say that their parents were fans of country music. 32% lifelong fans in the Western U.S., but 74%. Again, it's this generational thing. It's just kind of stuck in there for them. The longer you've been a fan of country music, the more likely you are to say that today's country is worse. Now, the number only gets to 29%.
The longer you've done anything, the more likely you are to say it's gotten worse.
Well, you've got more things to compare it to. You remember that was really great when that happened. But if you're talking about, is there a fire someplace? Oh my God, country is worse? Not at all. In fact, you see, it's almost a majority across this panel of 14 to 64 is 49%. About half say it's getting better. If I net those out, that's still 30% to the good, which is an amazing momentum score.
I think this new music is generated from this, commercialized, not really from, kind of the heartland or the small towns, but from a studio.
The older seems more sentimental, where the newer is more, the newer can be sentimental, but it's more, some of it kind of steers into the more pop genre almost too now, with like Taylor Swift and stuff like that.
I'm not saying I absolutely completely don't like the new stuff, but I just can't relate to it that well because it's where I didn't grow up with it.
There ain't none of the songs you play that's old, new, are they?
There's a few. A lot of it's older music. The older music's better than newer music.
That's coming from a 17-year-old. The older music's better than the newer music.
Talking about her grandson there, who was nosing his headstock into that shot. If I break it down generationally, you'll see this. The boomers, of course, they've got more to compare it with. Gen Zs, they're picky, but the millennials, only 13% say it's gotten worse.
Here's our first big headline. It's not to say they're not interested in new music. They like new music. But country's catalog is deeper and broader than really any other format. There's classic rock, but that ended. Country has a depth of music that, quite frankly, we may not be exploiting as radio to its full benefit. The qualitative told us this, and the quantitative just put a big exclamation point on it.
So, how interested are you in keeping up on new country songs being released? We give them a 6-point scale. 6 equals extremely interested, 1 not interested at all. Top 2 box then, the 5s and the 6s, because some people just won't commit to a 6. But they'll, 5's pretty good. Look at that, the millennials, the 26 to 41s. It's almost 3/4, 72% very interested in keeping up on new songs. Even the boomers, the old people within the sample, that's still almost half and over half among the Gen X and half among the Gen Zs. If they're lifelong country fans, they've been around this for a while, particularly since we've got some boomers in here. That's still a number that's up over 50%. We're very interested in keeping up on new music today. The newer convert you are to country, the more likely you're even more interested in the latest things coming out of Nashville. So when we turn around and ask them, which of these are places where you've discovered new country songs that you like in the past year? The number 1 answer here, you'll note, is radio. Number 2, YouTube. DSPs, by which we mean Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, Apple Music, Tidal. You go ahead, you can name all of them. Hey, by the way, peer group, friends, family has an impact, Facebook, TV show. Finally, they're at 26% across these 14 to 64s. You'll get TikTok, and then we'll cut this off with Instagram.
And what we're seeing here, 57 and 54 are essentially the same number. But country is definitely doing better on the radio side than other formats. Our ratings prospect study that we've been doing for 19 cycles now is showing radio coming in 2, 3, and 4 in some formats. So country radio is still right there in terms of new music discovery.
But if you break it out by generation, that's a different tale. If you're a baby boomer, that's a 58 to 64. Yeah, there's nothing else. We've lived our lives with radio on someplace. Gen X, 62%. Millennials, it starts to change. And by the time you get to Gen Z, radio's not number 1, and it's not number 2, it's not even number 3. And I would posit to you that there is a sea change here of how people have come to adopt to music. Many of us, our first songs that we really felt were personal when we were younger, we heard on the radio. My millennial daughter talks about recording songs off the radio. My Gen Z son has ripped songs off of the internet and put them on an iPod. And it's a much different experience. It wasn't radio first for him. So how do you feel about these types of country music? 6-point scale, top 2 boxes, 5s and 6s, shown again. And we thank Clay and CRS leadership for helping us with the artist names here. Because we asked them about brand new country. And we gave them no artist names because, hey, that's the power of Nashville. These aren't names I've ever heard of before, but I'm going to grow to love them in the future. So brand new country from emerging artists just getting started. Latest country from artists like Sam Hunt, Luke Combs, Dan and Shay, Kelsey Ballerini. Country from the last 10 years, you can read those. Early 2000s country, 90s, 80s, and then classic country. And this is a surprisingly, we knew there'd be a curve, but this is one of the flattest humps we've ever seen in this kind of inquiry ever.
Absolutely. I mean, this is, to me, spells opportunity. And we're not saying dump new music. We're saying think about the whole catalog. Think about the affection for the whole catalog. And it's nothing more than opportunity.
I don't know how important new music is to me. I mean, I think it's good to mix in, but I feel like I find myself
going to
kind of re-listening to the same songs over and over again a lot.
I think it's good to try to bring the old with the new more and more.
And this chart really illustrated what we heard in the qual, right? We heard Gen Zs say, well, I kind of like the old stuff. Well, to them, the old stuff was, maybe Shania Twain and, Garth Brooks. And then we heard boomers and Gen Xs say, well, I really love Patsy Cline and I really love Marty Robbins. I've actually heard a Gen Z say Marty Robbins. But, that's kind of the flatness of this line, right? It depends on your age what old country is to you. And, it definitely came out in the quantitative.
So if you break it out by generations, it looks like this. And by the way, Gen Zs are a unique generation. They have so much clamoring for their attention that those numbers are flatter perhaps and a little bit lower than the other generations, but you're still looking at Gen Zs at 66%, 69, and 68, talking about that range of country from the latest hits back through the last 10 years, back into the early 2000s. And look at the monster numbers among the millennials and Gen X, particularly going back into the 90s and before. And listen, these were artist names, these were not songs, these are concepts. So maybe you can lump it together that anything 90s and before is back there in my memory someplace.
And what we're seeing in Gen Z is pretty typical of the generation. They've got so much choice. We're seeing very little passion for anything among this generation so far. They might become passionate about gas prices at some point, but right now, they're not feeling much passion for anything.
Okay, so we gave them an impossible exercise. What would be the ideal number of each type of country music in a playlist of 10 songs? We specified their answers had to total 10. They didn't have to use all 6 types of country. All of them could theoretically, we spelled out, could be from just one, if that's all you really want. Now, their answers had to total 10. I'm going to report the results here as percentages because it's frankly easier for me to think of. But that's what the exercise was that we gave them. I'm showing it here by men and women, and then the 4 generations. And among the millennials, 40% of the exposure that they would want in a playlist is pre-2012, if you think about that as early 2000s country, because the other category we gave them was country from the last 10 years, which might end at 2012. I'm not, it's fuzzy, but the point is that that's 4 songs out of 6 that they're thinking about as being older. I mean, considerably older.
Play a mix of older songs for like the local radio stations. I feel like sometimes they do have like a repeat set of songs that they just like play every few hours.
If there was a radio station that was dedicated to older country, honestly, I'd probably listen to that more than I would Spotify because of, there's good songs out there that I've forgotten about.
I really do, just like the old, like George Strait, Chris, people that are old country and people that have the old country sound.
I mean, here's a Gen Z, right? She's talking about old country sound. Now, George Strait, arguably, I don't consider him old, he's still doing it. But the poppy thing, we've all heard that before. Oh, it sounds poppy. When we take into account all of the things that we heard, the different words and phrases that people used, to me, it kind of ladders up to this idea of authentic relatability, right? Like if you take all of the comments said, that's the sound they're looking for, because that kind of covers the lyrics and sort of, oh, I love an old steel guitar and I love an old this. And I think that, authentic relatability is probably like an all-encompassing phrase for old country, right?
So it's about 3/4 of this sample who say they regularly listen to country music on the radio, on AM or FM radio. So we've broken those people out because I wanted to make sure we understood that country radio listeners aren't that much different from the total sample. And if you'll kind of zoom in on the millennials there, about mid-slide, the millennials, the radio cumers in there, 41% of their 10-song exposure they would want from back in the early 2000s and before. So one more way to look at this. Remember, we asked them how interested they were in hearing the newest country coming out. The top of that scale, the 6s on the right-hand side of that screen, they're really interested in new country music. But yet, when we ask them to design their ideal 10-song playlist, 37% of that exposure should be from the early 2000s and before.
For many of us in this room, radio is a passion project. I mean, I started in radio in a long time ago, really long time ago. And I love radio. It's part of my soul. We think of radio as rich brands and personalities, but for a lot of people, radio is, as Jerry said, a music source or a device. It's a thing, and it's a thing you can't find at Best Buy anymore.
True.
And what we've determined is many people don't have radios at all except in their cars. And think about that. We're going to talk in a few minutes about radio's position in the car. It's time for us to get our passion out a little bit and bring it back.
So which best describes your use of these things? Car radio? About 3 and 4 in a week. Now, habits have been blown to bits because of the pandemic. Our lives, our habits have been turned upside down. But I want you to look at non-car radio. And we describe that as a radio not in a car, anyplace else. As Carolyn said, they're getting hard to find. Walk into a Best Buy and get all the young people really nervous by saying, yeah, I'd like to buy a radio. You see this kind of deer in the headlights. Oh, my God.
There is opportunity. Once again, our RPS study, there are devices in everybody's home. You're going to hear all these people talk about the Alexa or the Google. And what we found is the number one place for that device is the bedroom, the family room, the den, the living room. And they're talking to it. And they can talk to us on it too if we develop the skill to do it.
Smart speakers is something we've been looking at very closely since 2017. But the thing that got us through the qual this time was they're talking about Bluetooth speakers. It's like, well, I got one, you have one too, you got one, we've all got, but I'd never thought about it. Like, we need a number on that. And dang, that's big. Because if they're streaming to their Bluetooth speaker, we got to teach them that they can do that with a radio station stream, because that may not be their first thought.
Do you guys have a radio in the house?
No.
Have you ever?
I did a long time ago, like probably
Like as
10
a-
years,
as
like
a
10 years
child.
ago. I think I had a radio.
Yeah.
I think it was a radio alarm.
Never. Usually, I don't think I ever have. Like I said, usually regular radio. It's generally when I'm in the car.
So, once or twice a week for these devices among the generations. Car radio, 62% of the Gen Zs, 3/4 or more of the Millennials and the Boomers. Bluetooth speaker, dang, that's large. 2/3 of the Gen Zs. Smart speakers, 2/3 of the Millennials. A radio anywhere else. As a device, it's kind of an old device. In the past week, how much time have you spent listening to any of these things using your smart speaker among those who use smart speakers? That's not bad. If I set my expectation as half an hour in a week, that's pretty good. That's starting to develop a habit. And we're talking about over 50% for AM/FM radio. Of course, if you're Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, particularly since most of these smart speakers south of the Canadian border are Amazon Alexa devices, that's a pretty big number. We need to tell them what to say.
I asked Alexa to play like 107.9 or 102.5 or.
Okay.
Oops. Sorry.
Every time, yeah.
I have found myself at times putting on that morning show. If I'm not commuting to my morning job, I will put it on our Alexa device via the radio show's app. I've done that occasionally, but it's not like a regular thing that I think about.
We need her to do that habitually.
Yeah, and other industries have had to rethink, how they, gave themselves credit for sales and things. I mean, welcome to the omni-channel world for, CPG. So, it's a bit more work, to calculate how are we doing everywhere, but it's worth it, especially when you've got this kind of engagement across the board on different devices, and now radio is all of those devices.
The stack in the car, the technology stack, is deep. I got a new car last May 7th. It now has 4,200 miles on it. Go figure. Had I not deliberately looked and clicked, it was 10 clicks before I could even find an AM radio. I was sure the car did not have it. To deal with FM, it was only 3 clicks to get in there. There are no longer 6 buttons across where I can set my FM dial, and that's it. That's a challenge.
And it changes things fundamentally. We asked him, which best describes the audio system in the car or truck you drive most? In yellow, basic AM/FM radio, we specified it could have a CD player or even a cassette player. See, the number goes up among the boomers. In brown, AM/FM radio with the ability to connect a smartphone with a cord. It's connectable, but there's a lot of friction to getting that done. You got to sit down every time in the driver's seat and, okay, this thing's in. Via Bluetooth, we put that in the color light blue, pretty spiffy. Connected vehicle in darker blue, 16% across here, and it changes things massively. Frankly, I think that the supply chain is interrupted and we're not selling as many new cars right now is in our favor, at least for the minute.
And frankly, the older you are, the more likely you are to consider AM/FM your audio system. But, we're getting old and falling off the edge here.
Yeah, the boomers don't fit in 2554 anymore.
It's true, and we just have to make sure that if they're going to listen to us in the car, there's something great to listen to.
I kind of went from FM to XM because the car I bought had that. So that's where I would hear most of my country music.
I'll listen to country radio if I'm in the truck that doesn't have the plug-in for the, for the iPhone.
It hooks up automatically. As soon as I get in my car, it pairs to my phone, and then I can just pick whatever I want to listen to.
How old was she?
21. So yeah, that's the thing that I think, to step back and look at it, the radio in the car even now is working against us, right? The infotainment systems have, different, you guys used to have what P&G and others would have loved, which was this consideration set, bam, right there on the front dash. You had it for years. But, the infotainment systems are kind of, against you now in terms of radio being quick and fast, and people just don't age into a way, right? A way of listening. They grow up with what they grow up with. That's what they're used to, accustomed to, and that's what they continue to use. So these Gen Zers whose cars automatically connect when they go into, granted, they're in the older cars, they probably don't have the infotainment systems, but they're not gonna age into all of a sudden, and dialing through the radio. It's just not natural to them. So, it's from here on, it's time to rethink, how are we gonna expand? What are our strategies gonna be?
So, if I look at those who regularly listen to country music on AM/FM radio in brown, or country music via DSP in yellow, and the two groups overlap massively, so they total to far more than 100. But then I look at that broken out by these 4 different types of car infotainment systems. Basic AM/FM vehicle, you're a lot more likely to listen to radio. Connected vehicle, where it's a little bit harder, like Carolyn said, it's a few clicks down to get there. Well, there's less friction to get to streaming, and we see that played out here.
Good news. Radio is not invisible in the digital world.
Amen.
We can do this as radio. It's a crowded landscape, like P&G has a crowded shelf where they got Tide and Gain and All and the rest of them. We're just beginning to live in a consumer-based world where there are many, many choices. The good news is we don't have to keep a warehouse of inventory that might go bad or that we overproduce. Our inventory is wetware, and we have the ability to become creative, optimize our distribution channels, and radio still has an opportunity to be great.
Absolutely. So again, this comparison of listening to country music on AM or FM radio or DSPs, generationally, 2/3 of the Gen Zs listen to radio, but you'd rather be 77% listening on DSP. It finally really starts to tilt at Gen X, where there's just less friction and more habit connected to AM/FM radio. So we said, which of these types of audio entertainment do you think of as radio? AM or FM radio stations? Sure. 66% among the Gen Zs, though, where 55% say, well, the streamers like Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music.
I remember sitting at these conventions with managers and program directors saying, well, that's not radio. And I said, we don't get to decide what radio is. They do.
And 31% of the millennials think of podcasts as radio. It's all audio, and it makes us part of an amazing business right now. How much time would you say you've spent with each of these in the past 7 days? DSPs there on the left, AM/FM, AM or FM radio, owned music. People still spend time with that. Sirius XM included here as well. And you see that 72% spent an hour with DSPs in the past week versus 65% with broadcast radio. So I set the bar at 1 hour so we can look at it across generations. AM/FM in brown, owned music in light blue, Sirius XM darker blue, the DSPs in yellow. So at boomers, radio's number one. Gen X, yeah, they're close. You know, if I'm being statistically correct, 66, 63, those are, it could be either. Millennials, Gen Z, 54% to 82%. There's a problem connecting there. But we did ask them, in the next few years, would you expect you'll be listening to these things less, the same, or more than you do now? More in yellow, a lot more in yellow, a little more in brown, about the same, and then we go into less and a lot less. But generally speaking, they're predicting that it's a rosy future.
Yeah, a caveat here. People are really bad at predicting their own behavior. Think about it. How good are you at predicting your own behavior? What are you going to buy tomorrow?
I don't know. And we face really tough competition from streaming apps. But, and we went after this very carefully, trying to explain. You'll see there, about 5 down, local AM/FM radio station app. That's a big number still. You'd rather be YouTube Music there, you'd rather be Spotify, but we're getting in there, and you'll see down there, SiriusXM, iHeartRadio, their strategy certainly getting some notice. And at the bottom, you'll see the Odyssey app here as well.
Okay, I'm listening to it on iHeartRadio on my phone.
It's often a mood, or if I'm working out like at the gym, I either do Pandora or Apple Music. My dad recently introduced me to Apple Music, and I didn't know a lot about it until he said, okay, you really need to check it out. I like this so much more than Pandora.
I have a smart TV, and it's always on YouTube. I never stream anything but music, it seems like. I can't tell you the last time I watched a movie. It's always music.
So,
I was going to say real quick.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, right? So P&G, I was working with P&G as a client at, back when all of a sudden they came out with this, we're not going to look at brand anymore. Now this is arguably a company with some of the strongest household brands in the world, right? We're going to look at distribution. That's what we're going to do. And, those of us who have worked with them for years and years and years are kind of like, what? And what they realized was, it doesn't matter how strong your brand is. If you're not where people are choosing to shop, if you don't have as much virtual shelf space and as much actual shelf space as, your competitors and more, then it doesn't matter how strong your brand is. You're not there to be bought. You're not there to partake of, right? So they started looking and shifting their entire mindset. Moved entire units and divisions of companies around to accommodate this new idea of distribution. And in the grand scheme of decision tree, where someone goes, that's at the top. If you are a Target shopper, you don't go to Walmart. So you're a Target shopper, so you have to be where people are going to buy and take, advantage of the things that are there.
When I got into the business, we were unique. We had a barrier to entry. If you had one of these licenses, you were golden. People are now in the audio space, they don't have to do those damned ascertainments. There's no public file. You don't have to reapply for a license. You can just do it. So we have to deal with the world as it is and how it has been for many businesses forever. No barrier to entry. That means we have to be special.
Which means that you see a pretty nice number as it applies to local AM/FM apps among millennials, and it's just floating it up, particularly among Gen Xers who've had deep relationships with radio across their lives and now have technology that's changing their worlds around. We need to constantly push them and give them new reasons to install the app, to start listening that way. And we asked them how they started new playlists, started new streams if they're listening on DSP. Self-created playlists, top of the stack, particularly among Gen Zs who frankly have the time to play with such things. Selected a type of music, then they fill it out. Playlist the service has created for top hits from a type of music or a specific artist or other types of playlists. These are relatively telling numbers. It's a matter of making less friction. How do I get the thing started? Here's one. This is hypothetical, and it's absolutely hypothetical, but we wanted to see just how ripe is that idea. Agree, disagree. I'd pay $5 a month for an app that played my favorite country radio station without any commercials. We're all getting pretty used to paying $5 a month for stuff, or paying a $5 upcharge to get it without the spots, thank you. That was a pretty interesting set of numbers. Now, I don't know what percentage of that will actually turn into this, but boy, wouldn't it be great to find out. This one's really wild. If the streaming app from my favorite country radio station rewarded me with discounts to local businesses for the time I spend listening, I would listen to it more than Spotify or any other streaming app.
This whole exercise was to say, can we be creative in how we make money? We're business. We're all businesses. DSPs are a business. The music companies, the labels are a business, and radio is a business. Are there other ways that we can make money?
I work at a vet clinic. The communal station that everybody can agree on is the country station. George Strait will be on 1 minute, and then it'll be Morgan Wallen, or it'll be Dierks Bentley, or Keith Urban, or anyone.
Do you know what channel this is? What radio station this is?
I don't. It's just the one that we land on that has no static that we all can agree on.
Between records and, maybe have trivia so the nerds can call in and talk about stuff, and then also have little, games where people could be involved.
I would go back like the way they done it back in my time. Let people call in and tell what they want to hear, and play what everybody wants to hear.
I like that you don't really have to think about it. That it makes it very easy to listen to. It's kind of there, and it'll choose songs for you, and you can, if you don't like it, then you can go to another radio station that you have already, pre-programmed or whatever, and it kind of makes things simple.
It's kind of exciting to just say, oh, what's going to play next on the radio? We don't know. The kids like to say, oh, I'm going to guess the song that's coming on next.
If all radio is a music utility, we lose, because radio has a product that it doesn't own. We have to build beyond the utility to optimize the special things about the medium, differentiate between radio and the DSPs and their own iPods or whatever music they have on their computers. Radio can't be a music provider only. They love the music, they love the curated lists, but they also love the other things radio does and has been doing less of the past number of years.
So which best describes how you think about that station among those who are regularly using country radio stations? In yellow, you rely on that station, and you would be sad if it was not available. Biggest number among the boomers who've grown up with radio. You like the music and a few of the DJs. In brown, you like the music, and the rest of it's all right. We know that as an audience, these are some of the kindest people on the planet. Country listeners as a group tend not to want to be nasty about anything. So in blue, we could get them to say, in the darker blue, it's a way to listen to music, but you don't really care about the station. That's 39% among the Gen Zs. And you like the music, and the rest of it is all right. I would say to you that we have to convert more to people who rely on our brands, who care about it that much. So here are those data broken out by men and women and across the generations.
He showed me this slide, and he said, well, don't you have something to say about this? And yes, in an industry where for most of my career, the rooms were filled with men making decisions about women by men, I'd say we might want to consider, and we have gotten better, I will give you that, we've gotten better, more women in the room. More women in the room, because this is still a format that women love.
I love the personalities. David and Kelly morning show on K-Frog.
They're pretty funny.
They're
Yeah.
hilarious. I've listened to them for years, and
I think so. So what's his name?
Buzz Brainerd.
Buzz Brainerd. So he does a really cool thing where he has like a morning show, and I think those things with the morning shows and all that kind of stuff, getting people interested in an event, I guess, so to speak, that's happening on the radio.
Like
at a certain
Margaritaville,
time.
the Music Road.
Like
Happy hour.
that's cool. People tune in to listen to that. Obviously, you've got your music going on and all that kind of stuff too. But like looking forward to something or having something to tune into, I think would incentivize people to listen to FM again.
Flashing yellow light. We gave them a choice between listening to country music via FM or DSP. Only old folks preferred the radio.
If both were available, would you prefer to listen to country music on in-brown, FM, radio, using a radio or streamed on a smartphone or computer, an audio app, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Spotify, Pandora, or other? Overall, 40 to 51, radio wins among the boomers. It's a dead heat among Gen X, and then Gen Z and millennials.
I feel like it's because I can't really choose what plays on the radio. Like I could turn to a station I like and it'll be a song that I don't like, and then they'll just keep playing a couple songs I don't really care for, whenever I could just plug my phone in and play music that I know I like.
Versus like 6 months ago, it's probably about the same. 2 years ago, of course, it's a lot less, because back then, we were both working outside the home. So, since, we've all been kind of homebound, it's just, I would say 3, maybe 4 days a week, unless we're going up north for the weekend, then we're in the car a lot more, so.
We're in this moment where a lot of the workforce is deployed sort of, well, you're going to do more days from home or more days from a workplace, a job site or an office.
iPods were huge when I was growing up. Everybody had an iPod, nowhere near what we have now, where you can just search a feeling on an app and then it gives you that song.
So if I break it down by these people as they are thinking about radio, if they rely on country radio, then they tend to prefer FM. If they at least like it, and some of the DJs, pretty even heat. If it's just, it's okay, I like the music, or it's just the music, things fall outside radio's favor and lean more toward DSPs.
I like them. I think they're great hosts. They've got fun. They're funny. They relate to people in the community that call in. They do have some of the artists come on to their show, and they're just easy to talk to. They're easy to listen to.
Okay, so imagine listening to 10 country songs in a row using either of these two methods. FM without changing stations in brown, or a DSP, Apple Music, Amazon Music, yada, 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 without skipping songs. We just never get a break here. Yeah, just a year ago, we had seen FM was hanging in there, but that's changing.
No surprises here. What irritates them? Spots, repetition, burnout. It's the stuff we've heard for years. Years ago, though, the entertainment value outweighed the negatives. Can we say that's still true?
There are the numbers, 6-point scale. How often have these things caused you to tune out or change stations among those who listen to country on FM? Commercial breaks, songs repeated multiple times in a few hours, vertical repetition, songs that don't fit, didn't hit me the right way, songs that all sound the same if you don't like an artist, various songs by that artist will all kind of sound the same to you, even if they are different songs. Songs repeated at the same time, horizontal repetition problems, burnout. It's tough to measure burn in country call-out. I can tell you that in country research because, again, really polite people, they tend not to say that they're tired of it, but you see them go kind of, meh.
And, in all fairness, a lot of country stations don't play it long enough for it to burn.
Song by an artist who's made offensive statements, behaved offensively. Now you're getting to pretty small numbers. Or a new song I don't know or haven't gotten used to. Well, not particularly large numbers there either. In a sense, you'd be better off taking a chance on a new song than you would to play something that you're sure is burned out.
Plain and simple. I hate commercials. I hate listening to them. Commercials.
Okay.
When one's on commercial, the other will be playing music, so I usually will switch back and forth that way.
Hey, if you're in a PPM market and your spot breaks are on top of each other, they got nowhere to go. If you break it out by quartiles of time spent listening to broadcast radio, I was hoping that when we got to the top quartile, those who were listening 10 plus hours a week, that we'd see these irritation numbers go down because you really love this product. You spend a lot of time with it, only in fact the numbers go up. There are even more gripes.
And that's all telling to us. But there's good news here. Forward. They love country music. They really do love country music. The people we talked to and the people who participated in this study. This format has more music opportunity than I think any other format.
I like the George Strait and the older stuff too.
It just takes me back in time.
Kenny Chesney, Walker Hayes, Thomas Rhett,
like Ryan Upchurch,
Luke Combs, Morgan Wallen.
Acts like Cafe Anderson. I really like the way he ties old and new together.
Carrie Underwood, Blake Shelton, Carrie Underwood, and I was like, her songs got me through my second divorce.
Good, I think Maren Morris is absolutely amazing. I think what she's doing with country music is absolutely amazing.
Marty Robbins is old, but I do really like it. He's new to me.
I used to like Taylor Swift when she was country, but she kind of went to rock.
Okay.
And then they say it's a pop song, but it's not really a pop song because it's our Taylor Swift.
Morgan Wallen is one of them. Kind of compared him to the new George Strait.
Probably the newer music like Kane Brown, Luke Combs.
Probably Luke Combs, Thomas Rhett, Dierks Bentley,
Jason Aldean,
And Shania Twain. I grew up with Shania Twain, and she's still amazing.
Chris Stapleton. Oh my gosh, those kinds of artists are just to me, that's country music.
I'm surrounded with love.
So there was a ton we didn't even get to, which is why we're going to be doing some follow-ups. There was a whole music section. Is it pop or is it country? There's tons of data that we still have to go through, but we only had an hour. So here we are at the end. Just recapping what we already know. Country has a big, wide lane in terms of era. We don't necessarily use it. Radio as a device, as something that picks up signal off the air, is in cars and pretty much nowhere else. The new connected cars demote radio, which I see as opportunity. I see it's a little bit of a wake-up call where we can take the opportunity. We are developing a presence in digital. It's a crowded space, but thanks to the leadership of some of the companies you've heard about here, there's opportunity. Radio, as we old folks know radio, is considered a music utility for younger listeners. If we want to retain them, we need to give them a special reason to come to us. Given a choice between radios or DSPs, only the boomers favor radio. And radio is still stuck with the same stuff it's had for years, including too big a spot load and repetition, both horizontal and vertical.
So what is radio? It's an appliance, maybe, a device you probably won't find in Best Buy, as we mentioned. A functionality that's becoming harder to use in cars. Is it programming delivered by broadcasters? Well, according to many in this study, radio could also be satellite radio, any of the DSPs, or podcasts as well. So we would posit that radio has to be more than just a playlist. Think about it. I mean, playlists have become really, really easy. We can all make a playlist pretty quickly using any of the DSPs. And curating one playlist for thousands of listeners will lose every time to DSP where it can gradually learn my habits and I like this, but I don't like that. And we'll say it loudly. Radio has community in its favor. We can show up. And in 2022, as we're emerging, as we're heading into hopefully the endemic phase of this, we can show up around town and damn, it's nice just being with people again.
Remember that radio is the original social network. When you came into a new town as a radio person, it's a great place to be because you knew what was happening, where people were, where to shop, what to do. Radio has the opportunity to do that again for a community in a different way than Facebook, but clearly in a very human and personal way.
It takes personalities, promotions, commitment, but as Carolyn said, it has to reflect community. So we'd say, remember community service. Start with disaster preparedness. What happens when there are tornadoes or severe weather or some disaster happens? Do your listeners know that you'll be there, that broadcast radio will be there when the chips are down, when the only thing that's still working, hopefully, is your station? The best time to tell them is when you're doing the forecast, because that's when it's top of mind. Determine other aspects of your community that you can help support, that are on brand for you. This format has such a huge audience, largely in child-rearing years, so they instantaneously have something in common. Raising kids, planning for kids, dealing with their education, doing anything, and every parent we all know would do anything to make their kids happy. So, the dream of, we're gonna go to Disney. What a simple one. They have lots of things in common, and above some other formats we've looked at, they love having fun. So show up unexpectedly. Live appearances, big concerts, small concerts. People like hearing live music. Doesn't have to be a big name. Have fun, get local people on the air, get local people together. I think about this conference. We're all so damn happy just to be together.
And finally, one thing we want to remind everybody here, while it's a Venn diagram with lots of intersection, we're three different businesses being represented here. The labels and radio and DSPs have a lot in common, but there is a lot that's unique. And we have to remember that DSPs want users. The labels want to expose new music. Radio's job is to communicate with a community, but also serve its advertisers, the people who pay the bills. Three different businesses, three different constituencies to some extent. We have to remember that as we move forward and to remember to do what's best for each of our constituencies as we build our businesses.
So as it applies to broadcast radio, you need incentives to get them to install the app if that's what it takes. Audit the stream, by the way. If it doesn't sound good, change it, because it's got to sound great every time. It's got to work perfectly. FM radio always worked almost perfectly. There wasn't a lot of static. It came in really well. See if you can get, most radio stations have car dealers as clients. What about finding a deal with the car dealer to make sure that it's pre-installed, that your station's there when the new car owner or new truck owner drives off the lot? Put YouTube videos on your website showing them how to get to, how many steps down was it on your car?
Well, the AM was 10, the FM was 3.
Walk them through it. It's easy enough. There aren't that many car brands. Sell the idea of listening to the morning show on smart speakers and
Total line reporting, total line reporting. Get credit, total line reporting, total line reporting. If you're not making scads of money on your stream, total line reporting.
And we'll say it. Expose more gold. It's the different businesses thing Carolyn was talking about. DSPs, they just need to get users. Labels need to move new product. We're trying to gather cum, leverage TSL to build AQH. We're not recommending flip it upside down, change the playlist, but lean into the incredible trove of gold that's available to country radio. It's really monstrous. I'm quoting a basketball coach. Imagine me being all sporty. If you're not making mistakes, you're not doing anything. I'm positive a doer makes mistakes. Try new stuff. Subscription-only, commercial-free stream?
Why not?
playlists from artists. You got contact with the labels. Have somebody pick some songs for you. Local celebs and dignitaries, names that people in your community would go, oh, he likes that one. I like that one too. That's kind of cool. The idea that there's an app that would reward TSL with discounts.
Yep.
That sounds pretty cool. Fresh ears on everything, really. And not just, I love, we work with some amazing consultants who have amazing insights, but beyond that, what are people thinking these days? They're exposed to podcasts more and more, which have a much different production style than broadcast radio does. Give them an opportunity. Let's hear what listeners have to say.
And use the resources we have. We can interact socially with our listeners. We should let them have a voice. We do research that says a lot of people think contests are rigged. Well, put winners on your Facebook page. Fight that. There are ways to interact, become community, use video, use audio, use all the resources we have to do what we need to do to keep this business going another 50 years.
Amen. Boy, we talked for a long time.
Your turn.
Hello? If anyone has any questions, I'm Bill Donahue. I'll run
And we'll
right
be
to
back watching Clay and his panel at 2 o'clock to see what goes on there.
And Brittany has a question.
I was curious about the questions around the connected car piece or how people are listening in their cars. Because this was something I felt like I learned yesterday on the connected car panel where we had the representatives from GM and AT&T and then a streaming service. They were explaining that connected car is actually when Wi-Fi and all of the apps are fully integrated into the infotainment center, and that is different from the Apple CarPlay capabilities, which is different from Bluetooth and just being able to Bluetooth in through the car. And so I was curious, did we make that distinction in this question, or were we looping in CarPlay with the connected car question, or part of that, or was Apple CarPlay looped in with Bluetooth, or just you have the wire that connects? I didn't know if we got into that level of detail, but I was curious, just given the panel yesterday got a lot more specific than I realized that car companies and streaming companies were breaking it down. I was curious.
Absolutely great question, Brittany, as always. And short of doing ethnography to figure out exactly what they're doing, which, by the way, if you want to ride around with, a couple of hundred people.
Why not?
Yeah.
I get to pick the station, though. Yeah.
We did our very best to describe that there were connected cars, and we included Android Auto and Apple CarPlay in that category. And then we specified 2 different connectable kind of car systems, one Bluetooth and one a cord. And I know that CarPlay involves the cord, and that was one of those where when I wrote it the first time and tried to specify all this, in the midst of an interview,
didn't fit in the line.
You run out of words. So we did our very best, and these numbers comport pretty well with what we'd seen in the national study that we do twice a year in terms of numbers of connected cars out there. And then it reflects into, it's not so great for broadcast radio.
And my car has all of it. I can get into all of it through my system. I actually prefer my Apple CarPlay because, the maps are better than my car system. It's got my books. It's got it's got the stations. It's got everything I want in my phone. So I actually prefer Apple CarPlay.
And we really, just to point out too, while the car makers and we who are really, really close to it understand the nuance and the differences between, the nod that we get from when we have those conversations with Qual is that they have a tendency to group certain things, right? Anything is a wire this way, it's aux cord, right? How they describe it. And anything that's automatically connected, regardless of who or where or whatever, it's my Bluetooth, right? It could be Sync, it could be any of those other brands, but folks sort of don't always see that delineation, and there's insight in that. The fact that they don't know that deep into, they kind of categorize things, right?
Yeah, my name's Brian. I have a question
pertaining to DSPs and how it relates to radio. One of the things that I've heard is the appeal of country music is the authenticity and the relatability to the listener. And I learned yesterday that for someone adding a song to their playlist, like 34% is from themselves discovering that music. And it seems to me with DSPs on the rise that one of the appeals for the listener is that they can discover new music, whereas the formats now, there's a consolidation of the music that the listener can hear. It's just kind of a standard format, typically your 40 songs or whatnot. How do you see that as moving forward? Do you think it's something that the industry or we can look at as far as providing more variety?
What I'd say to you, and great question, is radio, broadcast radio is by design, by its very existence, is one playlist for thousands of people. The DSPs can start picking up you kind of like some of that, some of that Canadian country, and it can adapt to you and then start telling you about new artists, start reminding you, hey, here's something you might like. Radio is trying to serve thousands of people at a time, and as a result, the playlists are always going to end up being, I described it to a friend as, it's a Venn diagram. Here are my favorite songs, here are her favorite songs. If you're a radio station, you'll play the part where we intersect. Now, multiply that by 10,000, and you're down to this little thing. That's the radio playlist, and at least in what I believe and I think is supported by these data, if you're kind of narrowed to this playlist, you got to hang a lot of other stuff. There's a lot of other entertainment value that has to make this something you want to listen to habitually, that you want to spend time with. It may not be the ultimate music utility, but it's this thing that delivers your community wherever you go, and that's pretty amazing and incredibly valuable if we let it be.
All right, Carolyn, Lee, Jerry, thank you so much. Outstanding. And I would just say to the people remaining in the room, we will follow through. There'll be a CRS2022 within a few weeks, and we can dive deeper into maybe some of the music stuff that you weren't able to get to. Thank you guys so much.